20 months into my search, I was like, I'm going to start a bookkeeping and fractional CFO firm and keep doing that. If I find stuff along the way to buy, great, but I'm going to start this from zero. Most people going into search are used to being high achievers, used to being successful, and like used to get like, hey, if I put enough effort into this, like I'm going to get the result that I want. And I don't think search is one of those things where just more effort and just skill are the only things that determine outcomes. And so like luck is a huge, huge, huge part of that.
Would you do it again? Was it worth it? And I kind of struggle to answer that question. So I'm curious to ask that as well.
Yes, I would do it again.
Bay Business Group is your plug-and-play finance and accounting team. They handle all the unsexy but critical accounting stuff: bookkeeping, payroll, bill pay, invoicing, and budgeting, using modern cloud tools with clean weekly and monthly reports. Small businesses do not need more fixed costs and more headcount. They need some staff accountant support, some controller support, and some CFO support.
This is what they do. All of their clients get a dedicated controller/CFO, an accountant who knows their business, meets with you regularly, and helps you make better decisions. Owned and operated by former searchers and former big PE accounting due diligence providers.
All right, welcome back to The Intentional Owner. This is Kaustubh, and unlike other episodes, I do not have Sam, but instead we have Michael here. Michael from Bay Business. Do you want to give me the little, tell us about the business, tell us about, how long you've owned it. Give us a quick little intro here.
Yeah, thanks, Kaustubh. So yeah, Michael Young with Bay Business Group. I bought Bay Business Group almost 3 years ago. So we do outsourced accounting and finance for small businesses. Was at Big Four before this, doing accounting in that world, and now it's doing it on a much smaller, but I would argue more important level. And so, yeah, it's been a lot of fun, lots of bumps and bruises, but we're still going from here. And so, yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Sweet. I'm excited to hear about some of the bumps and bruises. I think, what we try to do with this show is really help small business owners kind of hear from other small business owners about how to make their life either easier, more intentional, more managed. So you're kind of in this perfect in-between spot of you're both the small business owner and you support small business owners. So I'd love to hear kind of, how did you decide to leave Big Four world and move into this world?
I think there was a lot of thought that went into it, maybe consciously and subconsciously. But I mean, I grew up, my great-grandparents, my grandparents, my dad all owned and ran different small businesses. So like everything from a drugstore and dry cleaner to an HVAC business. And so I got to see kind of all of that. And so a lot of the good of what small business ownership is, as far as having control and influence over kind of what your professional outcome is, seeing some of the financial good, but also seeing some of the financial bad. And so that made me think early on, hey, I want something stable. I want to kind of, those ups and downs of being a small business owner aren't for me. And so as I climbed the ranks at Big Four and kind of got on the doorstep of partner, was like, wait, is this really the next path that I want? Because once you kind of step in, like that's it. And so was pretty intentional, like, hey, is this what I want? Is this what I want professionally? Is this what I want personally? And so the answer kind of put me all back to like, no, I want to be doing it, like have control over how I spend my professional time, reap the rewards and the benefits of that. And yeah, that led me to doing a spouse funded search for 26 months. Not that anyone's counting. And yeah, I had met and got very fortunate to meet the founder of Bay Business Group, and it's led me to here. And so it's been a whirlwind, but a lot of fun at the same time.
Perfect. And so when you were leaving Big Four and you went on the search process, like you're one of the lucky few that actually has a skill, right? Whereas like when I was leaving, I was leaving private equity, I had no skills to speak of aside from, like asking questions. But so like, I'm curious, did you consider going down the like, hey, I'll hang a shingle and just start doing this myself? Like, how did you make that decision?
Part of me was like realizing that like, this is somewhat true, somewhat not true. But if I say that the Big Four I was at, like I would always be answering to a 28-year-old overeducated private equity VP. And so I was like, is that really who I want to be answering to?
That was me. That was exactly who I was. And it was a horrific time.
And so it's like, I would see partners who were like near retirement and like this snot-nosed 20-year-old is like telling them what's up. I'm like, man, I don't know if I can do that.
Yeah,
And so
correct.
I was very like allergic, I guess, to like, okay, that then I do not want to do any deal work. I don't want to do any of that stuff. And so I was like, I thought I'd be going down some similar family path of like buying a plumbing business or buying an HVAC business. And finally, after like searching for 14 months, like I'd looked at my first like accounting firm deal and I was like, oh, well, I understand there's a lot of reasons why this is pretty compelling and I actually know something about it. And so I guess I got kind of in my head, like the things I liked about accounting and working with clients and all that, like it got distorted in my head. And like what I actually enjoy is like working with clients that I've like seeing them be successful and then seeing my team be successful and supporting them. Like that is it. And so there was some good and bad at the big four, but I kind of got the baby got thrown out with the bathwater. And so 20 months into my search, I was like, I'm going to start a bookkeeping and fractional CFO firm and keep doing that. If I find stuff along the way to buy, great. But I'm going to start this from zero. And so that's what I did. Like I started that. And so I had my own thing for 6 months and then was doing great, like hired my first employee, had gotten pretty good recurring revenue, and then was like, all right, well, here's this awesome opportunity with a business group. And so my brother and I jumped into a business group then. And so it was like the minnow swallowed the whale, but it was good. It was
So you did actually launch your own thing to start.
yeah. I just but my background was all in like QVs and financial diligence. And so I ended up going more towards the everyday accounting instead of that.
Yeah, no, I mean transactional work is exhausting in its own right. Not that what you're doing today isn't exhausting, but as somebody who came from M&A world, I'm not surprised you landed where you did.
Not we it was never at your level, but it was it's you still feel it in that world no matter what.
No, and I mean the part around like revenue quality, right? Like I have to believe, I don't know much about the accounting as an industry, but I have to imagine bookkeeping and CPA is a much higher quality revenue than Q of E's and M&A advisory.
That's my opinion. Like I agree too.
Yeah. Talking your book, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think the way like looking at now, like, hey, how does the big four do their transaction advisory? It's all like the recurring piece from comes relationships with certain private equity firms, right? Like they're kicking out deals consistently. And so even though it is lumpy, like that's what the model has been. And so like we've kind of chewed on like, do we do the transaction work? And it's like, okay, well, you got to kind of feel like you've got consistent. Otherwise, it's like it's painful because everybody hates paying attorney dead deal fees. Like everybody, like, but we still have a staff then. And so it was like we've kind of like, let's focus on the everyday stuff instead of that for now.
And so when you bought Bay Business Group, have they historically been kind of straight up bookkeeping, tax, or what's the business profile?
Yeah, so was 90% bookkeeping, kind of fractional controller, a little bit of fractional CFO. And like, what does that actually mean? Like, I think it depends on the scale of the business, right? So like, if a business is half a dozen or less employees, like bookkeeping is just like, hey, getting stuff in QuickBooks and are you ready for a tax return? I think what I would call like controller level support is like, hey, does the financials actually inform you making decisions around the business, or is it just there so you can file a tax return? If it starts being like helping you run the business on a monthly basis, then I'd call that more like fractional controller work, because then you're actually worried about using the financials to make operating decisions. And so we had always been more towards that kind of fractional controller side, along with doing kind of the day-to-day bookkeeping of classifying transactions, doing invoicing, doing bill pay, doing payroll. And so that had kind of always been at its core, because I think that's what interests David, the founder. And so he had also kind of pushed the business in that direction. And so,
so this is perfect because we recently talked to Denise Montenegro. We recorded it 2 weeks ago, but these two episodes will come out around the same time. And she's a small business owner of a lawn, landscaping business, mostly commercial, her and her partner, Evelyn. And they've been going through this process of like, they've had a bookkeeper, they've had an accountant, but the bookkeeper is really like making sure the numbers are accurately reflected, but not really. And in theory, they bought some like advisory also as part of that. But, the example she gave was they reported to us that our maintenance revenue had gone up like 50%. And we're like, we know that can't be true. And that we went and looked into it. And it was like, oh, well, just some invoices that like the date of invoicing got pushed by accident. And so like, that's all it was. But like, that was like the advisory we got was like, your maintenance revenue is doing great. And so that's kind of opened up this larger conversation of, right, like what is reasonable to expect from your bookkeeper? What is like reasonable to expect from a fractional CFO or like an FP&A? Like that's where we were talking about it. So I'd love to kind of hear your, like how you think about that, where those bifurcations happen.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's gradients, right? Like you can find someone on an online platform for very cheap, or you can go to a like almost national CPA firm and have them do your bookkeeping. So like you can spend as much or as little, almost like everything in life on it.
Yep.
I would think for most, it kind of depends on where you are, like headcount wise is like what I would see it as is. And so if you're under 5 employees, 10 employees, like I wouldn't look at your bank account every day, like know where things are. Like even though most accountants like, no, don't just look at your bank account. Like you should definitely be looking at your bank account every day to know what's going on if you're that size. And then like the bookkeeping function then is much more of like, hey, organizing the financials, you can have something to look at and you should be getting financials done on a monthly basis. You're probably not going to get a lot of overlay on those financials or interpretations or like, hey, I know you do recurring work. Right now I have all your revenue in one account. Is that useful for you to look at? Like, but that's going to be enough for you to kind of make some kind of decisions on. And then as you start getting more and more complexity, like then you need the financial setup to match that. And so are you tracking sales by customer? Are you tracking sales by product? Are you tracking how much you're selling into each of your different customers of your products and services? Like if your financial support is bringing that or not, like that's kind of as you get more sophisticated on the like fractional controller outsourcing accounting.
Mm-hmm. And when does controller turn into CFO? Well, how do you think about that difference?
So when it starts like, hey, how much cash are we going to have in 3 months? That is more like, hey, we're doing projections. If there's some kind of projections is like the bottom of the CFO work is what I would say, where it's like a lot of our clients that we're doing, call it light CFO work, is like we've got a rolling 12-month forecast for them. And so we have some sense of where we think they're going to be. That helps them decide like, do I need to hire 1 person now or 3 people now based on what my sales pipeline is saying? Like, and that's kind of how that fits in. And so that's a little bit more than like, hey, is all the information coming together correctly? Hey, is all this useful for you understanding what the past was? And so then like, we don't do it, but like there is fractional CFO work to go beyond that, where it's like, we're negotiating with your capital providers, you're negotiating with vendors, like that all stuff you would expect a true CFO to be doing from like managing your cap table, that's stuff that like falls in that CFO world that is out there. We're kind of focused on just the dipping our toe in that of like, hey, helping you understand where the business is going to be at some point in the future.
And I mean, the average small business, it's not like they have true capital decisions to make every year, right?
Yeah.
So that makes sense. But I think that's right. Like, I think the way I was thinking about it is like small businesses, they need the type of CFO that can kind of do FP&A, right? Like that's
probably a better characterization. It's like fractional FP&A work is basically what it is.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Cool. But then what do you think about like with your clients, right? Like how much do they need to actually understand? You know what I mean? As opposed to being able to rely on your team. Like that's something that I've struggled to quite, like obviously I come from a finance background. So like, I feel like my answer is like, you just got to know it. You're the owner. Like you need to understand this cold, but like, that's not a reasonable expectation of everyone.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's not my framework, but someone was like, you need to be good in sales, good in operations, or good in finance. And like knowing kind of where you are as an owner and those 3 is super helpful in helping you figure out hiring decisions right away. And so I would say if you're somewhat dangerous in finance, like then okay, you just need like you're gonna be able to figure out the high level things. You just need someone executing the day to day. Like did invoices go out on time? Did bills get paid on time? Did payroll happen on time? Versus like if you don't really understand what a balance sheet is or like what's a cash flow statement, then you need more support than I would argue on a finance function. If you don't know who your most profitable customer is and why, like then you probably need more help on the finance side. I'm guessing like you can kind of, hey, just get the numbers together. If you want to see something, you can probably play with it quickly enough yourself versus like sending your team down a rabbit hole and they may or may not come back with what you're looking for.
No, that's right. That's why I've gone the path of kind of offshore bookkeeper who make sure QuickBooks is kept up to date, but like I pull all my reporting myself and I kind of cut the data however I want. So it makes sense because that's like the only thing I can do in this business. But I like for the business owners that are true, they're really great operators or really great salespeople, the way you explained it, like that is a support function they really need backfilled. So I'm curious then for you. So you bought Bay Business about 3 years ago. What was the approximate? I don't know how much you've shared publicly, but like approximate size, scale. Like what did the business look like?
Yeah, we are at like 30, 32 employees, and so I guess 5 years later we're at 51. So it's like
Nice.
it's been nice growth, not like doubling overnight, but like we've been happy with kind of how it's gone. I think you probably would say that you've got capital too, but like trying to scale a people business is challenging. And so it's been because it's like, hey, we find someone super talented, let's go find them great clients to work with. But it's like I can't clone them. And so it's like we gotta go find someone else that's super talented, come in and plug in. It's like I've spent a lot of my time, frankly, just on the like finding talented people piece. Because it's like, hey, as we have talented people to plug in, like finding the right accounting and finance, like people who need that support has been less of the challenge. And so
Yeah.
that's where I've spent a lot of my time is just like, hey, how do I find the right people? And it's been awesome because there's been people from like I've worked with before and in the past that like, well, all jumped in. And so that's made it, that's been the like where a lot of the sweat has gone so far.
No, I mean it's honestly not that different from my business. Like I think of my business, right, a tree care contractor. Like we do have the capital component, obviously, of trucks, but I think about it mostly as a homeowner doesn't know how to hire a good arborist, so they're relying on our brand. And our company's service offering is to find good arborists, train them to serve, clients. We're kind of doing a matchmaking service. And so in many ways, like accounting agencies are like kind of the like purest example of that.
Yeah, I mean that's what it feels like. Yes, is matchmaking for sure.
I'm curious then from like the people side, right? Like different types of personalities work well with different types of personalities, right? And like small business owners are one of like the weirdest segment of clients, I have to imagine, as like personality types and work styles. How do you manage that as an owner of an agency?
Yeah, I would say we say no quite a bit to like clients coming in because like, hey, my team is like that's it, right? And so like if there's something I
Mhm.
feel like isn't going to cause friction, and like I've learned, right? There was stuff I said yes to in the first year that like we've paid the price for later, and like I should have.
Yep.
I had some inkling, but I went ahead and did it anyway. It's like I've learned, and so that's kind of
Yep.
as we mentioned, bumps and bruises. That was one where it's like, hey, if someone seems like they're a jerk on the screen call, like chances are they're going to be a jerk after the fact, and so
Right. Right.
uh, but yeah, no, I mean, I think it is for sure a part of it. And I think that's like with the team, it's also talking about like, hey, yes, we're helping them. Yes, there's numbers involved. Yes, numbers are important. Yes, numbers need to be right. But like, understand what the business owner is asking you and what they're going through and like helping them make the decision because you might be like, hey, you really need to focus on this customer. It's super profitable. But they're like, no, I've got this issue over here. And it's like, help them address that issue and don't try it. Like, listen to what
Yeah.
they're telling you and help them go from there. So I don't it's not, I mean, that's the people part. And so it's never going to be perfect. But I think that is something I've learned along the way is like, it's not, we don't say yes to everything. And I think that's something like from, hey, big accounting days, the client was always right 100% of the time. Like, yes, there may have another was a mentality. And like, that definitely is not the mentality now.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, the as an advisor role, right? Like knowing when to tell the client, hey, you're going down the wrong path versus just you give the advice and you get out of their way. That's a tricky
Yeah.
kind of challenge.
And that, I mean, that's kind of what I talked to the team about is like, hey, we're providing financial information to help them go change things operationally. And as long as that's what's happening and like the owner is able to see those like, hey, they go focus on an operational change and they can see that happen, then like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months later, like that is it. It is working then. And so even if we think there might be a better operational change to make, as long as it's something they can do and see, like then it's working.
It's funny because we talk about that in tree risk assessments, right? Because clients call us out and they say like, hey, here's this tree I'm worried about. Like, what should I do? And like, we've had to be very clear that, hey, like our team, we're risk assessors, but we're not the risk manager, right? So like we can assess risk and make recommendations, but ultimately the property owner is the risk manager and has to decide how they want to manage the risk.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the same thing, right? Like there's clients now where it's like we've been having conversations with them of like, hey, we see this risk in your business. They've kind of like, yeah, I'm going to do this instead. And like going back to your risk manager point of like, they're now starting to realize like, hey, that the thing we highlighted, but then went down a different path with them, they're starting to realize like, hey, there was something there. And so I think that is like the other element is like, hey, you have to build trust with the client too. And so that doesn't just happen on like the first day, or sending an email with financials attached, like does not build trust. And so like there needs to be more to it than just that.
Right. So over the last few years now, you're about 3 years into the business. What have been kind of, obviously, like bringing in new clients? Everyone's trying to do that, but what have been sort of the focus changes, operational improvements, things you had to fix? Like, what have been the key things you've worked on the last few years?
I think so. Like operationally, like one thing we look at very super important is how quickly we're responding to clients, how quickly we're getting them their financials, and so that's all something is like that's something we've kind of put in place as a metric that we're all tracking. We're all, hey, how do we do this month? And so, whereas before it was kind of just like, hey, it was the trust was left up to kind of the manager to like determine what was happening. And so we've kind of helped put some firm guidelines down around that. And so there's been people hate change. Accountants really hate change. And so
Right.
that has to be managed. And so I think that was another thing like, hey, coming in that maybe I didn't really appreciate was like, the people change, like, hey, it's easy to go on a podcast or pull together a deck on why you should buy a business. The people change piece is like the hardest thing for sure, that like you maybe hear about, but like actually going through with it is a whole nother animal. And so
I was going to say the idea of impacting culture and changing that in an accounting firm sounds painful, right? Like it just doesn't seem like a place that would, by its nature, want that.
yeah, I mean, there was an awesome culture coming in. Like David, the founder, had done an awesome job. He had been in the like seat for 20 something years. And it's like, it wasn't like, hey, everybody hates change. No matter what anything. Like it was a great culture. And like, we've kind of just done it even more so. But even then, just like, hey, we're changing from this software to this software. Like some people are like, that doesn't sound great. Like accountants like really like their software they've used for a while. And so just that is where the rub has been.
Okay.
So maybe that all goes away with AI here soon. But
right. I know I feel like that's where we'll end this conversation is obviously like AI, like everyone wants to talk about AI and how it's going to disrupt all the white collar jobs. I'm a little bit more circumspect about it, but I feel like that could be, not only could that be the whole podcast, there's probably like 1,800 podcasts talking about that. But so I'm curious, how do you and your brother split your guys' roles? Like who does what?
yeah, so he's in charge of all the operations, like hey, clients are here, people are here. The CEO, I've spent my time on finding new clients and finding new people. And so,
Nice.
and it's worked. Like we hadn't super formal work together beforehand, before jumping in. He had same kind of accountant at a Big Four. Both kind of the same principles, same values. And so it's made it like, it's gone a lot better than I even thought it would. And so that's been a very good relationship. And like, that's another thing, like I can't imagine being in your spot where it's like, I don't have like not having someone to like, dude, I can't believe so much, like just having that commiseration point, like, or even just being able to like, I don't know, you get an email or something that upsets you and like, just be able to like, hey, good talk to him real quick, versus like having to like manage all that all the time that is not something I definitely do not take that for granted. And I can't imagine being almost like being in a situation where I didn't have that kind of partner to lean on as well.
Yeah. I mean, I've talked about it before, but I do think like when people ask me like what would I do differently if I were to do this again, like my number one thing is like I would have done this with a business partner. Like I think that made it so much harder to not have a co-owner. It's gotten easier more recently in terms of like we have an operations manager and she's great and I can share a lot of that load with her. But it's still different than a co-owner of the business. Like I can't like monopolize her time. She's still W-2 in the same way that like you and your brother can really have expectations with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, yeah, I mean, that was kind of was conscious of that, but it's been kind of way better than what I thought it would be. So yeah,
nice. And are you both like married with kids? Like what's the life situation?
We're both accountants, both like it's the same. So he's married. He has 3 kids. I have 2 kids. All of them are underneath. It's 5 under 5. And so it's like, yeah, on the weekends, it's chaos.
And so how have you guys managed that? Like going from relatively stable career lives to the small business ownership lives?
Yeah, I mean, it's been good. I think that was one of the reasons why I wanted to do it was so like, hey, before it'd be like all of a sudden we're going to dinner at 5 o'clock on a Friday night, or it's like, no, we have to change this thing for a deal, and it's like, okay, well, sorry, we're not doing dinner anymore. We can be much more intentional about planning our time. Like our total hours probably haven't changed that much, but it's like hours when we control when those hours are, and so
Mhm.
that's been a huge beneficial change. And so, like, I think we're both kind of during the week up super early, up super late doing stuff, but the weekends have kind of been carved out for kids, and so that's been a huge blessing. That like, and that was one of the aims of doing this the whole time, and so that's worked. And so I think that's been a yeah, and that's helped a lot with the just keeping saying it at work too of being able to have that unplugged time with them.
Right. Yeah. So what is the long-term vision, right? Like is it, is it financial? Is it life management? Is it all of the above? Is there like, what are you thinking about as you guys kind of keep building?
Yeah, I feel like I was talking to somebody last week and they're like, well, it's just a lifestyle business, or are you trying to like sell to private equity in 2 years? And it's like, there's stuff in between those two. Um,
Right.
and so, no, I think we want to keep going. Let's go. Like which again, part of the responsibility of bringing in super talented people is like, we have to grow as an organization. We just give them opportunities within the business group to step up. Otherwise, like they're going to be gone. And so we want to
Right.
continue to grow sustainably to give them the right opportunities. Like, and at the same time, then that gives us a challenge to wake up to and go keep building. At the same time, like, want to be protective of our family time, spend time from there. And so it's like, I guess trying to split the baby, but yeah, we have I mean, we'll be around for the next 20, 25 years. Like, have no intention of selling to a accounting private equity platform anytime soon.
Well, I mean, that means the first 3 years went well, because I feel like 2 years in, I was like, oh my God, get me out of here. But now 4 years in, I'm like, okay, I can actually see myself doing this for a long time. I'm having more fun. I'm wondering, like, did you guys go through that type of a, mental process, or has it been relatively like, hey, this is the plan?
No, I mean, we kind of were not kind of, we were very intentional coming in of like, hey, what is this going to be? What are we going to do with this? And so, I mean, plans can change, but like both of us came in of like, no, I want this for the long term. And even now, like, if somebody came and gave me a stupid check, I would be like, well, what would I do? Like, I would do what I'm doing right now. And so, like,
Right.
I don't, there's like, this is it for me professionally. So, yeah, there's not, and I mean, he's on board too. And so, yeah, it's the plan is still the plan.
I mean, what a cool feeling, right? To just say, like, hey, if somebody handed me a life-changing check, this is probably what I would go back to doing anyways. That's a pretty cool place to be.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's a lot of angst, a lot of trying to figure this out along the way, but it's like, like lucky, blessed, like whatever you want to say. Like, I feel very fortunate to be where I am.
Nice. And when you think about the short term, right? Like 2026, like what does the blocking and tackling these days look like? Like, what are you guys working on? What are the initiatives?
Yeah. I think it's right now it's like the next 2 months like the 10% business that is tax. Like, this is the crazy time. These next 6 weeks are a crazy time for us
Yep.
for tax. But then from there, it's like, hey, we want to continue. This is something we've done in the last year and a half is like onboarding. Like, so when clients come in, that's the hardest point for them. It's the hardest point for us. And so we continue to like build out processes and build out the team that's just focused on new client onboarding. And so that's like when we talk to clients, talk to the team, like that's when everybody, because just you're still kind of feeling each other out. The trust isn't there yet. And so that's all things we're focused on. I think continuing to making sure we're finding the right clients that are coming in that fit kind of who we want to be working with. And then it really is from there, like we can talk about AI, there's an AI piece to it, but it's
Mhm.
always continuing to up kind of what our delivery looks like to our clients. And so, and what we're showing them, how we're helping them get to the next step. And so those are kind of probably the three things
Nice.
right now.
And I'm curious on the client piece particularly, because this is something I think about a lot also over in our business, is like selecting like who is our client base, right? Like who do we want to serve? Like I get the separate thing of like we don't want to work with jerks, like understood. But like when you think about establishing your ICP or whatever it is, like how can you tell me a little bit about like what you guys have thought through, where you've
Yeah.
landed?
So I think we've seen, so like a third of our clients are government contractors, a third of our clients are nonprofits, and then a third are what I would call like growing entrepreneurs. And so those the government contracting, like you see it, right? Like the reinforcement of like, hey, we know how to execute on this. We know how they run their business. We know how to like, even our like staff accountants who are not super like, they're not CFOs, but like they can give like very good advice on how to like run a government contracting or like what they're seeing. And so like it's all reinforcing that. And like then that makes, when we're talking to a government contracting client, it makes it very easy to like explain how we work. And so it's the same thing on like the nonprofit side, like the team that works on that, like we're seeing the reinforcement of like, they know how to set up a nonprofit. They know like what the executive director is going to care about. They know how like a nonprofit budget's going to work. They know how to present to a board. Like, so all that's very reinforcing. And so that helps. And it's the same thing. Like we've now have had someone from a big private equity portfolio company, like who was in the FP&A function. We've brought on somebody from a Fortune 500 corp dev role. And so they're used to jumping into like new businesses and helping them sort like, how do I understand? What do I actually need to know to make financial decisions? And so the same idea of like, have the team skill set, focus on what the client is that's coming in. And so that's been like, it's such an obvious thing, but like, as we've gone down the path, it's like, hey, this has been really helpful for us to just have the right team focusing on those types of clients.
Nice. And so you've got the GovCon, you've got the nonprofit, and then the third leg of the stool is that sort of search people, or is that more broad than that?
Yeah, so it's search people, and so it's like the other ones we've like been successful. There is searchers in there. There's also like we have entrepreneurs that are like, hey, they started this themselves. It's a marketing firm or it's an IT services firm. They're trying to sell to private equity in some point in the next 5 years, and so we've been working with them and trying to like understand unit economics, like where are your leads coming from? Like, and so that's all been stuff we've been working with them on. And so it's like, they're not truly search, but it's part of that same kind of mindset of like, they're usually trying to go from A to B. They usually want to go there quickly. And like, they appreciate some level of like financial complexity.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's obviously our listener base for this podcast is entirely that segment for the most part. But then, so I don't want to like insult my own listeners, but like, aren't we the most painful clients, right? Like, I feel like I am. I feel like I'm like the client that is like expecting, white shoe law firm, accounting firm type service, but I'm running a 25-person tree company. You know what I mean? And like with the budget to match.
Yeah. No. And so, yeah, I would say I'm probably that same thing because I'm like our IT vendor. I would say our marketing firm, our SEO, like they would all tell you the same thing about me of like having done, and it's just like having grown up in like, yesterday I have another client service. I mean, it wasn't the same thing as like the huge attorneys, but like we were like, I was told on my first deal, like if the client emails you, you need to respond within 10 minutes. If you don't respond within 10 minutes, you're going to be thrown off this deal. And so like, that was the mindset of like client service. And so coming now to a very different world, I get it. We still want to be responsive, but it's not quite that level of responsiveness. But like, I still have that, like for my vendors, I still kind of initially like jerk and react that way sometimes. And it's like, okay, hold on. So and I would say, so we found like with some searchers early on, like that can be their mindset, especially with myself too. But as they kind of live in the SMB world for a bit, it's like expectations kind of get mellow out maybe. And so so maybe not every searcher is the right fit, but there certainly is some that kind of understand kind of what services they actually need.
Right. Maybe the ideal searcher is like somebody 3 years in who've kind of like they've taken off the edge of like their former PE or consulting or whatever persona. Interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I mean, I like, a lot of my sort of side hustle stuff, right? But like this podcast, my blog and all of that, it focuses on searchers and recently acquired searchers. And it's a different breed, right? It's like a different group of people entirely, for better and worse.
And even then within searchers, there's like the self-funded searchers, myself included, who like are looking at super tiny deals. You've got the like accelerator backed searchers that are looking at like legitimate like middle market deals. And so it's like, it's wild kind of what fits in between.
Nice. What have been, like in terms of the client selection, like clients that you've either churned or you've asked to leave, whether they churned you or you churned them, right? Like what have been kind of lessons learned there?
Yeah, I think it's gone both ways. And I think one is being super clear on, hey, here's what we're doing for you, and here's what the like scope is. Versus there's sometimes where it's like, yeah, people have just been like, hey, I need you. I don't really want like you to help me do cash flow forecasting. I don't really want you to help me do some kind of planning. I just like, hey, can you just close my books and help me with the tax return? Great. And so then all of a sudden, like, hey, where's my 13-week cash flow? Happens a month later, and it's like, hold on, this isn't like that. It isn't
scope.
Sorry, that's not in the scope. And so that, I mean, it's the same thing that happens in like big professional services. It happens here too. It's just making sure everybody's on the same page for scope. And sometimes maybe we try and do that and we shouldn't, and then like it falls down and then things aren't working, and like it's like, okay, that's been a lesson learned, is just, hey, be clear on kind of what expectations are. And that can change over time, but like just be clear on kind of what expectations are is a lesson learned. And so I think where it's also like there's also been times where it's just we'll see something financially and it's like this is not great. And so we'll ask to then walk away. Is like that's been a common theme, like when we've walked away from things. And so, but I mean, for the most part, like it's all like we've been really happy with our client retention. Like we're in tons of peer groups. Like our client retention's been better than kind of a lot of our peers. And so, like we've been super happy with how that's gone.
Awesome. I'm curious. I mean, one of the dynamics in any organization is there's the sales side and the service side, and the sales side is trying to sell, and the service side kind of has that feeling of like, why did you sell this? Right? Like, obviously, you have the benefit of the service side is being run by your brother, so like, there's a high level of trust there. But how have the two of you had moments like that where you've sold a client and your brother is like, hey, like you got this one wrong?
I mean, yeah. I mean, we talk about it a lot. Is like our fractional controllers, like our third title internally is managers. And so he's like, this is not in their strike zone. Like this is not going to be, and so then we have to figure out how to get it to somebody who has a bigger strike zone. And it's like, we talk about that a lot. It's like, we have the right skills, but it's always not everyone on the team has the same skills. And so we have to be conscious of like which of our team members are working with which clients.
Right. No, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Now tell me about AI. We have to talk about AI a little bit. Okay, let's start with the like classic podcast question, right? Which is like, why does AI not make accountants go away?
Yeah. I mean, I think it does. I mean,
Okay.
so my wife, so she's in public equities. And so even when I was like, I'm going to do accounting, and she was like, and this is, I don't know, 4 years ago for like by accounting firm, she was like, well, it's not going to exist. And so like, she's constantly in my ear about that.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think it definitely changes what the accountant's role is. And so I think it's going to like, part of what we do is the financial reporting and the accounting, but also then the advice, the relationships. Hey, is this actually correct or not? That second piece is not like, that's going to be around as long as there's businesses. I feel like so like the pie could shrink, the pie could look different, but that second piece is always going to be there. For like how easy or hard it is to do the finance and accounting, like that's going to get easier and easier, I think. That being said, like right now, today, it's really hard. Like, because I'm guessing you're the same, but like a lot of our clients have 8, 9, 10 different systems that everything lives in. And so none of the data is clean. None of it's been consistent. And so it's really hard. Like, and the data is not huge reams of like jillions of rows of data to like analyze and get conclusions from. It's like pretty simple. And so like right now, today, it's not there. And like all the data is pretty disparate. And so as the bots and the agents get better at pulling it all together and connecting it, then like, yes, that's going to get a lot easier and simpler. But at the end of the day, the accountant's function is like that advice, consulting, support role, but also like, well, are the numbers actually right? And so that competency of like, hey, yes, the numbers are right, I trust that it came together this way, is still there. Like, I'm sure you've heard the AI examples of like, was just talking to somebody who was in deals in Big Four, was like, someone at a deal had created the whole model from FP&A, like they had been creating decks, and like all of a sudden they came diligence time and someone started digging through it, and like not a single number in the deck could be recreated. And so like we're going to the board, and like people had been, and so like that element of like, well, is this right, is still there. Like the pie is going to look different, but I still think there's going to be some piece of there because the small businesses and their systems are just so messy. And
no, our data sucks, right? Like our data integrity sucks. Like our systems are all over the place. Like I'm totally with you on that. So I guess the question then for you is, as you look ahead of that future, like what are you guys doing in the business today to kind of future proof it?
Yeah, I mean, I think trying to simplify our systems, right? So we can have repeatable, scalable processes around, and like agents can then go in and cleanly look at information and pull conclusions from them. And so
Right.
that's part of what we're trying to do. what's hard is like, yes, we control the accounting and finance for our clients, but it touches other systems. It touches HR, it touches sales, it touches some kind of operational data for products and services. And so it's never only our decision to like change systems with our clients. And so
Right.
that's the hard thing to make it super consistent, because often it's like, hey, we really like this CRM because it talks this way to this, or like this is the way we like to have your data structure in your CRM. But like then a new marketing or business development person comes in and like has a very different view. And so that's the hard thing with us. Well, then the data is different, then there needs to be some interpretation. And so that's where, yeah. So but ultimately what our first path is trying to get some level of simpler systems to then help AI work better. Because I'm sure probably most people on this have in the QuickBooks seen it's AI, and like you ask it like, hey, interpret my financials, and it's like, hey, you spend $10 more in meals this month. That's up 150%. Like, do something about that. And it's like, okay, I don't know that that's really what I need to focus on right now. So it's like,
no, I mean, the Intuit's going to be the last one to get AI figured out. I think that's a given. I could not be more bearish on anyone figuring out AI. But no, I think what's cool about your plan, right, is like the idea of like building good, clean, repeatable systems. Like that's a good plan regardless, right? Like that's what every business should be doing.
Yeah. Yes. And then people get in the way, and like, but yeah, that's because it inevitably we have, like, I always think of it as a pendulum of like, this is our process, this is our system, every one of our clients has to follow it, or like, no, we're 100% client service, like whatever the client needs is how we're going to do it. And it's like, we've historically been much more all the way towards client service. It's like, let's be a little strategic of like when we can try and bend the needle back towards like, hey, this is a system. I don't think it's going to change the client a ton if we try and get them to go this way with something. And so often there usually benefits the client too, and like whatever system we like.
Yeah, especially if you can over time drive a cost structure advantage through it, then that talks a lot to clients, even if it's not exactly the way they had envisioned it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so and the other thing we haven't talked about, like AI is like right now is good, is on tax research. Like the tax research right now historically like was pretty bad. Like you would have, hey, if somebody asked you a question you didn't understand, people would go spend 2, 3, 4, 10 hours on it. And now it's like, you can get a pretty good answer in 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds. And so that's a huge benefit. And so you still have to be able to interpret the result back to be like, well, I don't think it's really considering this deduction or like whatever. But that research has gotten a ton easier so far with AI.
Yeah, it's interesting where, like, to your point around expertise, right? Like that the need for expertise will still exist. The need for advisory will still exist. We're just going to have to really compartmentalize the value, right? To say, hey, like if you want a $200K a year accountant's expertise, like we used to pay that person like $100K for doing the work and $100K for their advice. Now you're having to pay like $5K for the AI to do the work, but you actually have to pay $195K for the advice. Like, is that what's going to happen?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's right. It's like the plumber, right? Like you charge me $100 and you just hit a pipe, you just hit it with the wrench for 5 seconds. And it's like, well, the hit was the $5, but the 95 was on knowing where to hit it and when. And so I still think that's also part of why we want to continue to focus on who's coming in. Are they super competent? Do they understand all this? Because it's like how the numbers come together, like it's more and more complicated. Like it can't just be somebody sitting there like doing the same thing, spending all day doing the same thing, because that's going to get automated. Knowing like when that bot gets screwed up is the skill. And so that goes back to kind of why I spend a lot of my time on making sure we're finding like super competent, great people coming in on the front end.
Right, because you actually need to be hiring not the junior accountant who's doing rote work. You need to hire subject matter experts. Yeah,
and so that's it's not, that's not a different take than most people's like white collar take right now. Is like entry level is going away. The like mid career is like where it is, and so I think that that's not. There's a reason that's the common take, because I think there's a lot of truth to it.
Right, rough to be Gen Z and be entry level. I don't know what happens for them.
Yeah, just do podcasts.
Hopefully we societally figure out a solution for this.
It's scary.
This is happening. Okay, cool. Anything else on the AI front in terms of what's worth touching on as you guys think about it, whether it's on the client side or within your own business?
No, I think like I get asked it all the time, and I think there's been some pretty high profile VC backed AI accounting plays that have all gone belly up in the last 12 months. And so like, there's definitely something to it, right? Like there's hundreds of millions of dollars being poured into it, but like it's not quite there yet. And so I think, yeah, it'll get there. It'll make a lot of the painful stuff difficult, but like, or less difficult and easier, more to people approach. But I think there's still an element of like, you're always going to need somebody to be like, well, is this right or not? And so like that accountant needs to be able to answer that question.
Yeah. Judgment, right? That's where we, I think, find the actual difference between whatever AGI is and what we can do. Cool. Okay, good. And then so then to switch gears just momentarily, like when you think about your search journey, your kind of entrepreneurship journey, and where you're at today, like has it met expectations, below expectations? Has it, like harder than you thought? Like give me a little bit of a like, hey, like I get to ask this question a lot by searchers, like, would you do it again? Was it worth it? And I kind of struggle to answer that question. So I'm curious to ask that as well.
Yes, I would do it again. Yes, it was also like 10 times harder than I thought. And like I thought I had some sense of what it was going in, because I think most people going into search are used to being high achievers, used to being successful, and like used to get like, hey, if I put enough effort into this, like I'm going to get the result that I want. And I don't think search is one of those things where just more effort and just skill are the only things that determine outcomes. And so like luck is a huge, huge, huge part of that. And so, yeah, I guess I got lucky, very happy with like where I am now. But the journey was very, very hard. And it wasn't like, oh my gosh, I didn't get run like a marathon every day. It was like, it's just very isolating. And like similar to kind of your sentiment about like, hey, would you do it again by yourself or by a partner? Like it's just super isolating because you're the only one doing it. Like you don't really know if you did the right things today or not. Like you don't really have anything to show for it. And so that is doing that for a year straight, 2 years straight, like is very hard. And so that's, I don't think that probably gets, I don't know. Sometimes it gets talked about, sometimes it doesn't, but like that's all part of search. And like even now, I think it's harder now than it was when I did it like 3 to 5 years ago. And like I knew people that started searching like right as I was like got done, and like it's not a good sample, but like the success rate was not nearly the same as like what I saw with my peers going in. And so it's only gets more difficult.
Right. No, I mean, and I've been going more and more when I talk to searchers, like, hey, like if you can start something up and have some confidence around that, like go for it, which is obviously what you did. And then one thing led to another and you still ended up buying, which is awesome. But pretty cool to have like started down another path and then let serendipity kind of work its way back.
Yeah, but yeah, to answer your question, would do it again? Like again, I think that's the most helpful thing I did for search was just like, hey, why exactly am I doing this? I'm doing this because I want to be able to control how I spend my time, want the professional challenge, but also want the ability to control my time around being around family. And so if people have their why, like it makes it easier for like when that deal falls apart, like at the goal line, like so those are the days where it's just like, geez, man.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm glad I did. I got very lucky and glad I searched where I did and not having to do it now.
Amazing. Yeah, I agree with that. The vibe, I run the Seattle area happy hour for searchers once a month. And I feel like I've done it for 3+ years. And I feel like the vibes have gotten a little bit worse for searchers across those 3 years. Like I can feel it's harder to find good deals just in the energy. Well, Michael, we appreciate you sponsoring this podcast. For folks who are actually interested in services, what's the best way for them to reach out to kind of get in contact?
Yeah. So either email or just michael@bay-biz.com or on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. And so, yeah, those are probably the two best ways.
Perfect. And Johnny will add all of the kind of contact info in the notes for this. So that'll be there for folks who want to reach out to Michael. And will you be at any of the kind of SMB events or anything like that this year?
So we'll be at some, still kind of nailing down the exact calendar, but we'll be at some of those.
Perfect. Well, hopefully folks can harangue you then about bookkeeping at those. But awesome. Well, appreciate you coming on today, Michael. Any last thoughts? Otherwise, we can call it a day there.
No, Kaustubh, really appreciate your time and you having me on. So thank you.
Bay Business Group is your plug-and-play finance and accounting team. They handle all the unsexy but critical accounting stuff: bookkeeping, payroll, bill pay, invoicing, and budgeting, using modern cloud tools with clean weekly and monthly reports. Small businesses do not need more fixed costs and more headcount. They need some staff accountant support, some controller support, and some CFO support.
This is what they do. All of their clients get a dedicated controller/CFO, an accountant who knows their business, meets with you regularly, and helps you make better decisions. Owned and operated by former searchers and former big PE accounting due diligence providers.